And tonight, Liz Truss has said that her premiership was wrecked by pushing back against a left-wing orthodoxy that has captured the West. The former Prime Minister insisted that her tax-cutting agenda only failed because there wasn't enough support for conservative ideas within the establishment. Truss also took aim at Joe Biden, accusing him of seeking to export socialist economic policy to Europe and the UK. Truss also singled out the Bank of England and the Office for Budget Responsibility as having been captured and said that quangos have become overly powerful. She said the Tories have been wrong to get rid of Boris Johnson. And she took aim at Rishi Sunak, saying that taxes are too high and the government is too big for Britain to thrive economically. So has she been proved right? Is she the greatest Prime Minister that got away? And are there just 10 years to save the West, as per the title of her forthcoming book? Let's get the views now of tonight's newsmaker, broadcaster, author, former government minister, and definitely the best Prime Minister we never had, Anne Widdecombe. And even the Germans are cutting taxes by 32 billion euros to boost their economy. Has Liz Truss won the argument?
Well, I think she was always right that the secret lay in growth, and that, of course, one of the big drivers of growth is a low tax base. So, I mean, I think that was absolutely right. But one does have to say that she mishandled the whole thing. I mean, not only did she try to do too much in one go and did spook the markets, but even going back to when she appointed her cabinet, she didn't appoint any of her enemies. And that is the most basic political mistake you can make, because when you are under pressure, you need people in your cabinet who rely on you for their position and will therefore keep their supporters on the backbenches in line. She didn't do that. It was idiotic to just send a message to the rest of the party saying, unless you supported me throughout, you've got no future. That was the message she sent. It was daft.
Well, I agree, Anne, because what you do is you lose great talent then, don't you? Partisan cabinets don't work. Boris Johnson made a similar mistake, arguably.
Possibly, but I mean, I think if you look back at say, the Thatcher cabinet, you know, you had giants like Ken Clarke, who weren't of Mrs. Thatcher's viewpoint, but who took on the health service and reformed it, the education service, the prison service. You know, he was never idle. As soon as he was in office, he did things. And we had giants in those days. And now, I'm sorry, we got pygmies.
And Anne, what do you think about Truss's point that there is essentially a left-wing blob that runs the country, whoever is in power? Is that an overstatement?
It may be a slight overstatement, but I think that there is no doubt at all that there has been a long march through the institutions, and that we do now have, in positions of seniority, people who are woke, people who are left-wing, people who see things from that perspective. And it comes down to a lack of professionalism. Now, if you are, for example, a senior civil servant, they're all part of the blob. If you're a senior civil servant, professionally, you stay absolutely neutral. You do whatever the government wants to implement. You warn and advise ministers if you think they're getting it wrong. But at the end of the day, you serve them. The clue is in the word, civil servant. And that is what you do. And that is what the civil service used to do and certainly did during my time. So it's only the last 20-odd years that all that's gone.
And this goes beyond our shores, doesn't it? Do you agree with Liz Truss that the West itself and the values of liberal democracy and open free markets are under increasing threat?
I think we're certainly going through a period when they're under increasing threat. Yes, I don't know that I think that is any more significant than it was during the Cold War, for example. But while we're talking about security, let me take the term quite literally and ask how on earth we can defend ourselves when actually it would probably take weeks even for the army to stand to. I mean, we are that weak.
Indeed so, Anne. You raise a good point about the defence budget, which surely must increase in this ever-increasing world of threats. And Sir Keir Starmer will this week launch a bid to paint Labour as the party to get illegal immigration under control. The Labour leader, we're told, will outline plans to smash criminal gangs which smuggle people to the UK. He's going to bring order to the border. So, what do you think about this? He's going to The Hague on Wednesday for a meeting with EU officials and Europol, and he thinks that Labour can stop the boats. Can they?
No. They absolutely cannot. And we've heard all this stuff before from Labour governments about how they were going to be tough on immigration and how they were going to be able to handle it where we couldn't. And the answer is, of course, he's not going to stop the boats, because so long as you've got a French police force that is not giving a high priority to stopping people trying to get to Britain, as long as you've got a French Navy and a French sea rescue service which just shepherds the boats towards us whenever they get into a problem. And so long as you've got a system in this country, which I haven't heard Keir Starmer suggest any solutions to, of not practicing detention, not having national identity cards, having a very flourishing underground economy, that is why we're so attractive. It's so easy to disappear in Britain. Now, I haven't heard Keir Starmer address that, and that is the central issue, because what you need is a deterrent.
However, perhaps Keir Starmer's skills as a lawyer will help him, because there are legal aspects to controlling illegal immigration. Of course, there are by definition. Perhaps he'll build a better relationship with our European counterparts than this Conservative government. And also, they couldn't do a worse job than the Tories, could they?
Well, your third point is quite well made, actually. You know, is it possible to do it worse? And I think the answer to that is that it would be extremely difficult to make a worse fist of it. But that doesn't mean that they're going to do any better. And I don't see any evidence that they are. I mean, yes, I'm quite sure that Keir Starmer will go and grovel all over Europe and apologise for the fact that we left the Union and all the rest of it. I'm sure he will do that. But it isn't actually going to make the Europeans any keener on keeping the problem that side of the channel than they are now.
No, and of course, briefly, Anne, many in the Labour movement don't want to stop the boats anyway. A lot of this is ideological.
Well, there is a huge ideological opposition to the idea of controlling immigration in the way that certainly I would like to do it. There is enormous opposition to that. And yes, that comes largely from the Labour Party. But what sort of fist have the Tories made? What sort of fist have the Tories made? Honestly, if you've had enough, then I would say dare to vote for change.
And it's always the highlight of the weekend. I'll see you in a week's time. My thanks to former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe.